going on over
You're
here.
ending your podcast and drifting into ours now, correct?
Yeah, that one's over. Those guys are done.
Tell your
done
peeps goodbye.
Late.
So everybody, now that you can hear me, welcome to Rockapedia. I'm Music Man Mike. You're here with Gypsy Joe straight out of Sweet Virginia. Dylan, the producer, is here in studio with us. He's doing some actual producing today. He's not a guest. He's not going to join us in a roundtable discussion about music today, although I am going to get him involved. Believe me, I'm going to throw it to him a couple times, and he'll surprise us. He'll even find some things we talk about. He's going to say, "Oh yeah, that guy," right, Dylan? To get the camera pointed on you.
Yes. I say sorry. I'm doing work over here, so
I like it. Joe, how's it going, man?
Going good. Well, everything's good. Phoenix lost. That was a bummer, but it happens.
Yeah.
My friends in Milwaukee sent me condolences, and they also sent me $10 to celebrate the Bucks win.
You know what? I forgot about that. You were a Milwaukeean at one time.
I was at one time. I loved it out there. It's a great city.
And the Bucks.
I still have really good friends out there.
Yeah. I remember my memories of you living in Milwaukee, and you always told me this was the wintertime sucked, but in the summertime, when it starts in spring, all the way through fall, the festivals. I mean, that's where they make all the beer at, right? So there's festivals every weekend.
out there, Miller's out there. Like when people would come to town, we would always take them to the brewery and try to have a good time. I remember one time it was raining outside, and after the brewery tour, you get this chip, and you get a free beer with the chip. Well, it was raining, and the bar is outdoors, but they have like a little eave over the bar, so they just set out the thing of chips and just let us drink, because it was raining and no one else was out there. So we were just like, all right. So Miller, thank you, Miller High Life. They just let us drink away. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So what a coincidence, what a segue, I should say, of you bringing up the Phoenix Suns losing the game, because that's where I was last week, was in Phoenix. I was actually in town Saturday night was that Game 5, I guess? Game 5 or 6 was Saturday night in Phoenix. And I got off the plane, and the first thing I did was look at my ticket stub and StubHub and all that stuff, and just see, by chance, there's some guy who wants to sell his ticket for $50. Well, there wasn't that guy, but there was a bunch of guys wanting to sell it for $600 and $2,000, but nobody in my price range. So we stayed home. I stayed home with Dad and Lila. I went out to visit my parents, just so everybody knows, and we watched the game from the comfort of the living room. So that's even better sometimes, rather than paying outrageous prices for beer at the game and all that good stuff. But I was in Phoenix last week, and as soon as I got back in town last week, I got a hold of Joe, and I said, hey, I think we should talk about Phoenix this week. A couple of things happened this week. One of them was the anniversary of Lollapalooza. So Phoenix is the first place that ever had the Lollapalooza concert.
And I was at that show. It was a great show. Jane's Addiction headlined, and they were terrible. I'm pretty sure that Perry Farrell, the singer, was wasted, and at one point Dave Navarro threw his guitar at him.
Yeah,
it was really bad. And the highlight of all highlights of that show was Susie and the Banshees, who I had no intention of seeing or cared about, but they were great. They were so good. Rage Against the Machine played on the second stage because they were a nobody then. Rollins band played.
Nine Inch Nails was there.
Nine Inch Nails played 2 songs and destroyed the stage because they said later in Rolling Stone, they said it was too hot.
Yeah.
It was like 100 degrees that day in Phoenix, and they complained about it.
It was funny. I got back. Go ahead.
No, it was just they complained about that and threw a fit and destroyed the stage. And it was really sad because there was a guy standing in front of me who had NIN shaved into the back of his head, and I felt really bad for that guy because he really loved Nine Inch Nails and got to see 2 songs.
Been looking forward to that show for a long time.
Yeah,
Need to find a way to make sure when Trent Reznor and the boys come to Phoenix that the weather's a little cooler. So not sure how to do that. But it's funny, when I got back in town from Phoenix, I come back to work. I think it was Wednesday morning. I walked in and I saw Rick, and he helped me plan this trip out last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. And you automatically think of Phoenix, and of course it's July. So I get back and Rick says, "Hey, how was Phoenix? Hot?" I said, "Well, believe it or not, it was not hot. It was better than here. I mean, it's strange. They're living in the 80s and 90s right now, temperature wise. It's monsoon season.
That's us here.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, well now we're not. Now here in Texas, it's going to be the hundreds, but yeah, in Phoenix, it wasn't that bad at all. It just wasn't. Not what you expect normally for July. Now they're probably still going to get it, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna get to 90 today. It's been kind of nice the last couple of days. My air conditioning went out yesterday, so someone's gonna fix it today. It's just blowing air right now. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's just blowing air. It's not really cold air.
All we heard was your music at the beginning of the show, sir.
And speaking of Phoenix, that just
Hey Joe, it's a secret voice right here. So I'm walking in here and I'm hearing y'all talking about the weather. I want to rock. Come on, where's the rock and roll at? I mean, where is that at? Joe, you're the only 50-plus-year-old guy. Let's go 50-plus. That still has posters on his wall. How cool is that? I mean, you are a rocker all the way through, and you're talking about weather.
Die Hard. Well, I was segueing into what I was listening to was Icon, which is a Phoenix band, and it just happened to come on. It's not like I played it intentionally. It just came on my Spotify playlist, and it was there. It's my 80s rocker playlist.
Yeah. So then we talked about basketball, and then we talked about the weather. We talked a little bit about Lollapalooza. We went back to the weather because of Trent Reznor. So Rick's right. Let's get back on track here. So, sometimes we open
with a
with
request dedication though.
Go ahead.
Not for today, but for next show.
Uh-huh.
So what was the big thing they had in New York? You know, it was like back in the '70s where all the hippies went and smoked.
Woodstock.
Woodstock, right? And they had it. Was it?
They didn't go there and smoke. They went to go listen to
Yeah,
music.
whatever. They were there smoking, doing all that. But they had the. Remember when they had the second Woodstock back in like '99?
And there's a
bad.
There's a celebration. There's an anniversary of that going on right now as well.
There's a special on it on HBO. It's pretty cool. I mean, I didn't realize, and I remember when that happened, but how bad that went. It was bad, right?
It was all about the
Terrible.
money. Just all about
It was
money.
hot, record heat. I mean, there was stuff everywhere. People, went like a lot of raping going on.
Yeah.
It was a bad situation, and MTV got hammered on it pretty hard too by the producers of the Woodstock. Of all of that. So that would be kind of neat to get some background on that. Depending on what the weather's like. If it's cold out, let's talk about that, and then we can get to the rock stuff.
Well, first of all, concerning that, Limp Bizkit played, so yeah, of course it was bad. That's going to be a bad scene. There's no getting around that. So yeah, but yeah, we can totally discuss that. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. So Woodstock 2, they called it. I think is what it was. And then another documentary that's out right now is called The Summer of Soul. Now that one, have you seen that?
So good.
So that's
so good.
So that is the Black Woodstock that people took from us and hid from us all these years until Questlove dug it out and put together a documentary about that. I mean, it starts out,
and the part with Sly and the Family Stone, like that. It like hit me really hard. Like it made me realize, like at that time, that like there was such a cultural shift going on with like Black America and White America, that they were like identifying themselves separately, and it was amazing the way that Sly and the Family Stone just came together and like played that show, and people were just like shocked by what they were seeing. It was like, wait, there's a girl playing trumpet, there's white guy playing drums, like what is this?
I did hear the part the other day on another talk show. I do venture into other shows sometimes and listen to what their opinions might be, but he said that there was actually, when they came on stage, there was people in the crowd that were looking at each other and saying, that white people know how to play the drums? I'm just blown away over here. They had no idea, no concept. And when I was telling somebody at work about this the other day, I told one of my coworkers, I said, have you seen that yet? They said, no, I don't have that channel, or whatever the reason was. And I said, here's what it was. It's basically your Black Woodstock in a city. And what city was that? Was it New York or Philadelphia, or where was that?
It was Harlem. It was in Harlem.
Okay. Yeah. And I said, here's the difference. Let me tell you the difference in the Woodstock and the Summer of Soul was that the people that were at the Summer of Soul concert were ranged in all ages, mostly black people, probably maybe 100% black. I'm not for sure, but all ages. I mean, there was teenagers there with their parents. There was parents there with their brothers and sisters that are full grown now, aunts and uncles, things like that. It was like a family picnic type deal, and everybody was dancing, smiling, singing along, and having a good time. You know, when you looked at the crowd at Woodstock, it was a mess. It was just a mess. It was there.
Yeah, it was.
They were there to. I mean, I understand they were there to be free. They were there to try to find themselves. They were hippies. I mean, it was a weird time. It was the end of the weird time, is what it was. Woodstock was kind of the end of everything, and then things restarted in the '70s. But yeah, that's what I saw. Just a bunch of people having a good time. I mean, the dang show starts out with Stevie Wonder, and Stevie Wonder starts singing, and then he goes and plays drums. And he does like a 5-minute drum solo. So now you know. I'm watching that thing when I first turned on. I said, "What is this Summer of Soul?" And I see that, I'm like, what the heck is this? Are you kidding me? Stevie Wonder's opening a show, and then Sly and the Family Stone come on, and who was that one band? The Bloodstone or Blood Rock? The black guy? Oh, the Chambers Brothers. Chambers Brothers came on. The 4 guys that played more or less hard rock.
Yeah.
You know, and just blew people away. I mean, and that's been hidden from us all these years. And I didn't get that part either. I guess I need to either go back and watch it again or find out why I was oppressed.
Yeah, apparently they tried to not, I guess it was filmed, so someone tried to sell it as a Black Woodstock, but no one was interested.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess at that time, I get it, because it was a weird time, and like they didn't think they had an audience for it. But like, oh my God, that's a show first of all, Summer Soul is great documentary. I would have loved to have seen that show. That the musicians on there were amazing. Like Nina Simone. Oh geez, if I could have seen Nina Simone back then, that would have been crazy.
Yeah,
like stuff like that is insane.
I mean, just the people they had on the bill. I mean, it was just it was a sign of the times. It was who was popular at that time, what was going on. It didn't matter if you had 1 hit or 20 hits. You got mixed in with everybody else, and were just as popular and famous and treated like royalty, no matter who you were up on that stage. I mean, those people appreciated that show. And I'll just go back to what I said earlier. There's nothing like seeing an audience full of people that know how to act, aren't pushing each other around. They're smiling, having a good time. I mean, this was before Harlem started breaking down. Maybe I don't know the history of Harlem, but
it's around the time it started getting pretty bad out there.
Yeah, things were getting
They
bad.
kind of go through that also with like. There was an influx of like drugs coming into Harlem at the time, and like they kind of go through that in the Summer of Soul about what was happening in the neighborhoods at that time, and like it was getting pretty bad. So I think a lot of people were like, this is like a great release for us to get away, and like, you know, it was still a good neighborhood. Like people were great, like they got along great, but like they had some hard times for a minute there, and like that was for them a great escape. Like man, like I would have loved to have been at that show. Just like. I was amazed when I saw it, and I had no idea that ever happened.
So that's on Hulu, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, on Hulu. So yeah, I highly recommend that to anybody out there that wants to see something, learn a little bit about history, not just music history, but history in general, and then watch a great show full of great performers. So that's Summer of Soul. It's on Hulu. And then let's get back to what we were talking about before. We'll touch on Rick's suggestions maybe next week of Woodstock 1 and Woodstock 2 and just compare the two. But I have not seen the Woodstock 2 documentary, but I do know it's out there and I've heard about it. And I kind of remember it from the 90s or whatever. But, you know, in the 90s.
I'll look for it. I haven't seen that or heard about it either, so I'll check it out.
I would go home. I think I think I got HBO Go Max or HBO Max or something like that. It might be on there, but I'll look for it. But yeah, I remember being on MTV, televised. I made a big deal about it, and I'd go home and turn the TV on and try to catch as much as I could when I was at the house or somebody's house that had MTV. And I remember the Chili Peppers had a bad set too. The Chili Peppers, they didn't look like they were hanging in there together. They were kind of, I don't know. It wasn't the Chili Peppers that I knew.
9 Inch Nails was playing in the mud.
Yeah, it was.
I think I remember that part.
Then they started doing the bonfires and just burning the place down. It's just like, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the opposite.
Those kids, man, they just don't know how to act.
So we didn't either, but I never threw anybody in a bonfire and raped them by. As Rick said, there was a lot of raping going on. Okay, well, I do.
Nice focus, Rick. Nice focus.
I do remember that after the fact, they started getting these reports of all the crime and stuff. It was pretty bad. But I'll go back to what you said and back you up on it. If Limp Bizkit was there, it was bad. So
It's going to be bad.
was Korn there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a double whammy. Then now you got Korn and Limp Bizkit. That's rough.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
Yeah. So let's go back to Phoenix. So I touched down in Phoenix on Friday morning, and like I said, when we talk about the weather, it was nice out, man. The wind was blowing, a little bit of a breeze, and then of course in summertime, and it got hot in the afternoon. But the first thing I did was I took the transit system. They got a great transit system there, and I took that as far as I could up to Dad's house, and then Lila came and picked me up. She didn't want me waiting on the bus. I said, well, the bus will be here in about 15 minutes, and I'll be there at your house in another 15. So if I'll be there in 30 minutes, she goes, oh, I can come pick you up. So they came and picked me up. They were about 10, 15 minutes away. So I just rode home with them. But I couldn't wait to, unpack, settle in, visit, all that good stuff, and then eventually make my way back around town and see some of the things I hadn't seen in a long time. Because I don't know when the last time I've been to Phoenix was, but, one of those places obviously had to be, and it was, the Mason Jar. I went to the Mason Jar, I think, on Saturday. So got in town on Friday. Saturday, I borrowed the car. I went out and about, just running around doing some stuff. And I stopped by the Mason Jar, which is not the Mason Jar anymore. It's called the Rebel Lounge, and it's a coffee bar. And I did sit in there and talk to the 23-year-old bartender guy and to kind of shoot the shit with him a little bit, or shoot the stuff with him a little bit. And and they still have a stage there. You don't go in the front door anymore. You go in the side door, so it's a little bit different of a setup. But other than that, it's the same. The stage sits in the same corner.
So first of all, for people who don't know, the Mason Jar is a bar in Phoenix. I'm sure there's a bar in Dallas like this. There's a bar in every city like this.
Yeah.
It's not a club. It's a little bar. Yeah. And I think the capacity at the Mason Jar was like 287 or something like that. Like it was something off like that. So it's not a big place. It's just a bar. As a matter of fact, Ligori's, the bar next door, was bigger than the Mason Jar, and they didn't have bands. It was just a bar.
Yeah.
So you have to keep in mind that this place is tiny, but you would see the best bands ever there.
Everybody.
It was like a CBGB's of Phoenix.
Everybody came through there, and was it because Franco? Was it because Franco could afford them, and nobody else wanted?
Couldn't.
Yeah, I guess part of the thing is I don't see if you're the Black Crowes and nobody knows your name, and you come to Phoenix and you play a big giant place like Rockers, you're not going to fill the place up.
Yeah, you're not. No, back then, no, you would. And the thing with even when I saw the Black Crowes at the Mason Jar, they were opening up for a band.
They were opening up for Junkyard, right?
They were opening up for a band called Junkyard, which I love. Junkyard. Junkyard was a good band.
They're still out and about. Those guys are still out and about.
Yeah, I was sitting at the bar. It was a Sunday. They did two shows. They did a Sunday afternoon show for all ages, and then they did a show later that night. But I had something to do that night, so I went to the all ages show, and I sat at the bar with Franco, the owner, and we were sitting at the bar watching the Black Crowes, and he was like, "Joe, I should get these guys back here sometime." And I'm like, yeah, they're really good. You should. Like, they're a great band. But they were starting to be played on the radio at the time. Mm-hmm. 2 months later, they're headlining the Mesa Amphitheater.
Yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, Franco, you're not getting the Black Crowes
to
play the Mason Jar ever again.
No. Yeah, I've read stories about them going on their first tour and playing clubs in San Francisco, and like nobody was there. And then eventually word of mouth went around. You started getting a few people here and there, and then like you said, it wasn't too long after that, they're probably in Phoenix, and then probably on the radio, and then bam. First time I saw them, they opened up for Aerosmith.
Oh wow, that would have been a good show.
Yeah, that was on their first tour. That was their first major tour. So they went from clubs to opening for Aerosmith, probably in a matter of a year and a half. I mean, a lot of hard work, a lot of shows went into that thing. But yeah, the Mason Jar I've seen myself as far as big bands. I saw. who was it? The other Andy McCoy band, Cherry Bombs, was there. So Andy McCoy
Cherry
from Hanoi
Bombs.
Rocks, and once Andy McCoy left Hanoi Rocks, he formed several different bands, just trying to keep his name alive and keep playing. That's what he is. He's a traveling musician. He's a rocker. He's a guitar player. So yeah, he's always going to be involved in something. So I got to see him there. That was pretty cool. Joe, you saw him as what was the name of his band when you saw him?
He was in a band called Shooting Gallery.
Oh, that's right.
It also had a guy from the Lords of the New Church and the guitar player from Dogs D'Amour. And someone else was in that band, but I didn't know who the singer was. He was a new guy. But yeah, that was the night that it was an infamous night at the Mason Jar where there was hardly anyone at the show. We loved Hanoi Rocks, which is Andy McCoy's old band.
Yeah.
And Chris's band always played Taxi Driver. No matter what band Chris was in, they played Taxi Driver by Hanoi Rocks. Like, we worship Hanoi Rocks.
Yeah.
So Andy McCoy, they're playing, who we came to see, and Chris and his bass player standing towards the stage, probably the only people standing towards the stage. And Andy McCoy has the nerve to say something and call him, "Oh, why don't you cheer along with your boyfriend," or something like that.
Huh.
To which Chris flipped him off, and Andy McCoy threw beer at him, and Chris had a pitcher of beer and threw it at him. Andy McCoy jumped off the stage. Chris picked him up out of midair and slammed him on a table. The owner, Franco, was like, "Hey, guys, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you to leave, blah, blah, blah." He gave us a case of beer so we would leave. And we left, and we heard that Andy McCoy had to sit in a chair the rest of the night and play the rest of the show.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, I remember when you told me that story, and I don't. You're very detailed in that version of it, but the only version I remember was Chris punched Andy McCoy in the face last night. I'm like, oh my gosh! And you know what? That's a great story. If more people knew who Hanoi Rocks and Andy McCoy were, but my audience is limited. Who can I tell that story to? Yeah.
So Hanoi Rocks is the band where the Razzle, the drummer, got killed by Vince Neil of Motley Crue.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. And one time,
at one time,
So when I moved to Phoenix, I was 21 years old, and I went there because I went there for several reasons. I knew I wanted to be in a band. I knew I wanted to be a part of a scene that was happening somewhere. And the biggest scene, if you really wanted to dive in head first, was Los Angeles, California. Go to Hollywood. So the time I went to Phoenix, it was really happening in Hollywood. But my dad didn't live in Hollywood; he lived in Phoenix. So I stopped there. So I'm not going to go. And I think it was probably a wise move for me not to go to LA by myself back when I was 21. It was better off me doing what I did, making the pit stop in Phoenix, and then Lord knows I got in enough trouble there. I didn't need to be in LA getting in trouble. The Phoenix cops were bad enough. But when I went there, I'm in Wichita, Kansas. I'm 19. I'm 20. I'm listening to all this music, and you got the band Keel. So Ron Keel's band. He's out of Phoenix. He's playing some pretty hard rock, some pretty good music, good singer, a good band. I listened to Ron Keel, seeing them start to make it a little bit. They got their album that they put out, their independent record. Now they're moving up a little bit. There's a band called Icon out there, originally called the Schoolboys for people that live in Phoenix. But by the time I got out there, they were Icon. They were on their second album, probably working on their third, and they'd lost their singer. And Icon is a very powerful band, great band. They kind of got mixed up with the poppy side of the music business a little bit, and somebody started encouraging to write more songs like this, and don't record that, record this.
They started getting songwriters. They started getting songwriters is what happened.
Well,
like the songs they wrote, like their first album was great. After that, they had like Bob Halligan Jr. coming in. The same guys that started doing like Bon Jovi stuff later.
Yeah, they were
same guys that started writing for like Aerosmith and Bon Jovi and all that. They started getting I think it was Capitol Records they were on.
Yeah, it was.
They were like, "Oh, we're going to get you guys some songwriters." Yeah. It's like kind of, there were still some good songs, but like it really brought them down.
It just changed who they were. They weren't the Icon that you and I fell in love with when we heard the first album. They had changed quite a bit by then. Their costumes they wore on stage, were fancy, tailor-made, leather stuff that was probably bought from the same place where Rob Halford and Judas Priest bought their costumes that looked very similar in a way to them. And also they used that same songwriter, Bob Halligan Jr., was on the Turbo
Yep, they did.
Turbo album.
That's right.
So he
Forgot about that.
So Bob, he messed up a bunch of stuff, but he made a lot of money in the process. You know, he did.
Yeah, yeah, he did.
He had his hands in everybody's cookie jar, and he was making money left and right, and he was helping some of these guys. I mean, guys like Aerosmith, yeah, they could use that kind of a boost. They're already radio guys anyway. It's not going to hurt their reputation. You can't hurt the reputation of Aerosmith. You can hurt the reputation a little bit of Judas Priest, and I think they kind of did that a little bit. Although I do like Turbo, it's a pretty good album. The sound was just different, and some of the songs, excuse me, some of the songs were just a little different. But you know, so what? Bring up Judas Priest. Rob Halford was living there, so when I would go into the Mason Jar, lo and behold, the first time I ever went there and saw him, you know, I'm this kid from Kansas, right? I'm at the bar at the Mason Jar. It's a Friday or Saturday night, pretty busy. I'm guessing Surgical Steel was there. They were kind of a knockoff of Judas Priest, and he was probably there to see his boys, support the boys. So he was standing at the end of the bar, and he's got his leather jacket on. It's definitely Rob Halford, and he's drinking a Budweiser and he's chewing gum. And that was Rob every weekend. And the first time I saw him there, I had these girls that were at the bar. I said, "Hey, is that Rob Halford?" They look at me. "Oh yeah, that's him." And nobody talks to him; they just leave him alone. He says, "Yeah, no,
Yeah,
he comes through all the time." Okay, well, I guess I won't go talk to him.
I would see him there quite a bit.
I guess I won't go talk to him either. Then, if that's the cool thing to do is ignore him, then I guess I'll just be cool. But that's Rob Halford, and I'm from Wichita, Kansas. You guys don't understand.
I did that with one time. I went to the Mason Jar, and Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee were standing at the bar, and I went up to the bar to get a drink, and Tommy Lee is next to me, and he's like, "What's up, dude?" I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "I'm just gonna be cool." That's it. That's all I said to him.
Yeah.
And just got my drink and left.
Yeah.
It's like, gotta be cool, man. Gotta be cool.
And then you and I were there one night when Phil Lewis and Tracy Guns were there from LA Guns.
Yeah, they played with who later became my friends in Purely Innocent. They played Born to Be Wild.
They did Born to Be Wild with them. Yeah, they sure did.
Yeah,
yeah, that was pretty cool. And that was the LA Guns at the. I mean, that was. They weren't really anybody yet, were they? How did we know who they were?
No, they weren't. We knew because Guns N' Roses had just put out Appetite for Destruction. And of course, you already had their first EP.
Oh, we were there visiting.
Before that,
we didn't live there then, right? We were visiting.
No, we were visiting.
Okay.
And they were there. I don't know what they were doing there, but we were just in the Mason Jar to see a band, and they were there. And they got up on stage, and I think that we knew who they were because of the history of Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Like we knew who LA Guns were because we're nerds like that, and we know stupid stuff.
Well, they may have been there. They may have been there the same reason that guys like CC DeVille from Poison came to Phoenix, because you get burnt out on LA. You just need a little break sometimes.
Yeah.
So you go to hang out at a different weekend, a different scene somewhere.
But you go to a different crappy city.
It's an 8-hour drive across the desert. It's a terrible drive. I've done it before. And it's also, back then, it was like a $125 round trip ticket. So I would go see Craig in LA for $125. Just come home from work on Friday and grab an America West airline flight and go out there and come back on Sunday. You know, it was worth it for me to go to LA. But yeah, a lot of those guys would come out to Phoenix on the weekend just to check it out and see what was going on. And of course, who knows, they may have played the Mason Jar before, and they thought, well, let's go back there and hang out and say hi to Franco.
Well, here was a weird thing, and I still don't know to this day why this happened, but I remember one weekend, Paul Valenzuela came over to my house, and he was like, "Hey, I just saw this band at the Mason Jar called Tool, and they're playing every weekend this month, so we have to go see them. You're going to like them." Mm. And I had never heard of Tool, didn't know who they were. At that time, I think all they had out was their EP, and I went to go see Tool 3 weekends in a row at the Mason Jar.
Yeah.
Like that, they were so good. And oh, here's my cat. They were so good. I ended up buying that EP, which is still really the only Tool I listen to is that first EP. But that it's just stuff like that at the Mason Jar was just weird. It was like, what is happening?
And this was all, unfortunately, the days before. Fortunately and unfortunately, let me put it that way. The days before cell phones and things like that. So there's not a lot of stuff on the internet. if you go look up Nirvana Mason Jar on YouTube, there is some footage. It's not the
Yeah,
best.
there's almost the whole show, I think.
It's not the best of footage, but there's definitely some footage. You
No.
kind of get a general idea by watching that video. You get a general idea of what the place was like, and it was.
If you look closely, I'm sitting at the bar.
Yeah, I'll have to double check. Yeah,
You look real close.
I flipped
I'm
through them
sitting at the
before.
bar.
I flipped through them before just to see, to see if I can find one that looks decent. And I don't know who the guy is that recorded that or how he recorded it, but
Yeah, I don't
mean,
either.
it's a piece of history and it's on there. So yeah, but another person that lived in Phoenix that I never ran into at all was Alice Cooper, who still lives there to this day. I don't know that Rob still lives there, but Alice Cooper still lives there. He's got Cooperstown Restaurant.
Dad saw him on the golf course one time.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he came home one day from golf and he was like, "Hey, I just saw Alice Cooper at the golf course." I was like, "Wow, that's pretty awesome."
Did you go talk to him, or were you ignoring him and being cool?
He was being cool. Dad's cool. It's cool like that.
Yeah, so Alice Cooper lives there. Another band that I fell in love with after I moved there was the Gin Blossoms. The Gin Blossoms also splintered into a band called the Gas Giants, and that was just Robin Wilson, the lead singer, and the drummer from Gin Blossoms, and a couple other guys in the band. But Joe and I got to see the first Gin Blossom show, and that was Christmas Eve, and I don't know what year that was, but it was definitely Christmas Eve because the Gin Blossoms to this day still, and I think they have. If they missed any, I'd be surprised. But they always make a big deal about playing Christmas Eve in Phoenix or Christmas Eve wherever they're at. They love playing Christmas Eve shows.
That was there was a punk band that opened for them called God and Money, I think it was.
God and Money.
And I'll never forget their version of God Rest You Merry Gentlemen.
God rest you merry gentlemen. Yep.
It was hilarious.
I do remember that. Yeah, no, that was a great version of that song. And wasn't I know that this is a weird time now because of the COVID and everything, but in December, what was going on that I saw the Gin Blossoms? Oh no, that was some other time I saw them. The Suns were in the playoffs. And so Robert would come back to the microphone every once in a while and say, "I just checked the score, everybody. It's so-and-so this and so-and-so 33-34. Like every three songs he would go check the score and come back and tell us what it was because he was missing the game.
I'm gonna guess it was probably the Arizona Cardinals if it was in December.
Well, I don't think this was December. I think that was my first immediate thought. But now that I think about it, that would have been around Father's Day. Playoffs and stuff were always start around March, April, May. So yeah, I'm thinking of a different Gin Blossom show. But I definitely remember Robin keeping us updated on the score. So yeah, the Gin Blossoms, a great band. Still on tour to this day. Who else? Joe, you ran down a list of all the guys that you knew that were there playing in bands when.
I remember. Okay, going back to the Rob Halford thing, I did get to see Rob Halford do 3 songs with Sacred Reich. He got up on stage at the Mason Jar. Now Rob Halford, powerful voice, crazy powerful voice.
Yeah.
And you see him in stadiums or arenas. So when you see him in a small bar get up on stage and do 3 songs with a band, he did 3 songs from Hellbent for Leather, one of their older albums.
Yeah.
He did 3 songs from that, and it blew me away. It was crazy to watch him walk up on the stage, do the 3 songs, and then walk back down and sit down at the table with his partner, and I was like, Rob Halford just did that. He just did 3 songs in a bar, and I got to see it. That was insane. But I saw Kiss in a bar out there one time after the Gold Rush. It's more of a club, but they were preparing for their Revenge tour, and they were playing smaller venues.
I remember you telling me that.
Gold Rush.
I was pretty
And that was
pretty
with
amazed.
Shooting Gallery opened up that one. But yeah, that was pretty cool. I saw Alice in Chains open up for Iggy Pop there. That was the first time I interviewed Lane Staley. That was a crazy show. I had a great time at that show.
So for those of you that don't know it, Joe was a writer for a magazine Probably more than one, but the first one that pops in my head is Loud Magazine. Loud Magazine with the mighty Pete Lundstrom as the producer, or
Yes.
publisher.
Yeah, he was the one that got me the job. Joe Lopez was the publisher.
So when Joe,
But yeah, that was
when Joe lived at
that got me a lot of
my
gigs.
house, I would get phone calls from people saying, "Yeah, I'm supposed to talk to Joe at 2:45 this afternoon." Oh, hold on, hang on, who is it? And it would be the
This is Rick Gershom at A&M Records. I would like to speak with Joe Santiago, please.
yeah, or it would be the
Chris
singer.
Cornell's on the other line.
It would be the lead singer from. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy that called. The guy that called one time in the afternoon, and
Oh, who knows?
yeah, it's,
I remember when the Ramones called. I remember when the Ramones called Kathleen's house, and Kathleen's mom answered the phone.
is this Joey or Johnny? Who is this?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Well, hey everybody, our time is up here on Rockapedia. We went a little over today, but that's okay. We will continue this conversation per Sir Rick's request. We'll get into a little Woodstock, a Woodstock 2, but I do want to continue talking about some of the Phoenix stuff. Just to
Depending on the weather.
Yeah,
Depending on the weather.
Well, we spent too much time on the weather. That's why we're wrapping it up here today. We won't do the weather report next week, and the partly cloudy.
I like how Ricky jumped in. I like how Rick jumped in and like oversaw what we were doing and like took care of things.
That's what he does here, Joe. That's what he can walk.
I'm so glad I live in Virginia.
His genius of walking through a room and just picking up minor details and making something out of it just blows me away. So, as a matter of fact, when I'm working back there with my coworkers and Rick comes back and says good morning and fist bump everybody, how you doing? He walks through and he walks to everybody's desk and then he walks back out. So y'all have a good day. And I walk over and look at Stacy's phone and I said, you know what? Here's what Rick saw: 46 missed phone calls. Got 1,000 unread emails. Well, he just walked through here and said hi. I said, no, he didn't just walk through. He just came to see what's going on. And he heard every conversation he picked up. He's a genius, but that's why we love him. All right, everybody. Once again, Music Man Mike saying goodbye. Dylan, the producer, is here, but he's working behind the board today. And Gypsy Joe out in Sweet Virginia. Have a good day, sir. Talk to you next week.
See you guys.
Bye-bye, everybody.